Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Carl. Welcome to Carl's Opinion. This is our Tuesday night live show, and welcome aboard everyone. And yes, you saw the title, S.Ricchetti, also known as Stephen Ricchetti, spy in the Biden camp, H.Biden, also known as Hunter Biden, V.Nuland, also known as Victoria Nuland. They had a meeting December of 2015. That day should be interesting. Then we see V.Nuland, Victoria Nuland, slash C.Steele, of course meaning Christopher Steele. They had a meeting in, I believe, July of 2016. Steele met with her to give her information on her famous Steele dossier, if you will. So there you go. And then this is why Rudy investigates. Okay, there's more than just Rudy investigating Joe Biden because somebody thought he might be president. Well, actually, nobody ever thought he had a serious chance of winning as president anyway. So the idea that, well, we got to take him out because from day one, he was taking himself out. So the idea like, oh, we better check this guy out. And like they say, well, these polls are showing, those polls are useless. Those polls show everybody winning against anybody early on, and they're useless. No serious political pundit, no serious internal pollster for a campaign follows those. They would never, internal pollster would never go to Joe Biden and say, hey, shows you're beating Trump. Hey, you just need to coast. I mean, that got to be fired in 2 seconds. I guarantee you, the first campaign he gave advice to like that, it would be over for him. So anyway, so let's see how this whole thing started. Joe Biden, this is from the New York Times. Joe Biden, his son, and the case against the Ukrainian oligarch. And this was from December of 2015. This was first alerted Biden to the fact that he was being investigated. The State Department had concerns about it regarding Biden's son, Hunter Biden, being over there. But, it's Joe Biden, so you can't say anything. And also, I hate to say this, but I kind of think this is, this sounds like it could have been a setup from Hillary Clinton. You remember, Hillary Clinton was running for president in 2016. She did a deal in 2008. Remember, she was challenging the vote in Michigan and Florida against then candidate Barack Obama, and she said she threatened to take this to the floor of the Democratic Convention in 2008 and put up a floor fight. And then a big deal was made where it's like, okay, you're going to back Obama, you're going to be made Secretary of State, you're going to run in 2016, and Barack Obama is going to support you. And everybody said that's the way it's going to be. The powers that be said that's the way it's going to be, and those are the powers that be, and that deal was done, and so be it. But, so in 2008, she knows I'm not going to be president in 2008. Most likely I'm not going to be able to run until 2016. Who's going to be in a position that I have to worry about in 2016? Well, the person that's going to obviously would be in the best position would be Barack Obama's vice president. By then it would have been a vice president for 8 years. Joe Biden made, he ran in 2008 to be president. He ran in 1988 to be president. So obviously he wants to be president. That's what she knows. So she's got to figure out a way. Okay, how do I get rid of this competition? Because the Clintons, and it's kind of inspired by H.A. Goodman in his reporting. The Clinton machine is brutal. And they don't take any prisoners. And they're about winning. They're about making money. So she knows in 2008, their team knows that Biden's going to be a problem for them. So they have to start moving the pieces around and, to make sure that Biden doesn't, have a chance. And one thing is telling about this, in 2015, Joe Biden actually asked Hillary Clinton, hey, if I run, are you going to use my son against me, this Hunter Biden thing? He works on the board of Bureaucrat and his dealings in China. Are you going to use that against me in the campaign? And Hillary told him, this is hilarious, tells him, well, I won't use it against you personally, but I can't guarantee my staff won't. Now, think about that for a second. I can't guarantee my staff won't use it against you. And then, of course, at some point, Stephen Ricchetti, and we'll get to this, Stephen Ricchetti goes to work for Joe Biden, and actually in 2016 was like his chief strategist, and believe you me, he was the one that actually talked Joe Biden with everything going on, talked him out of running, told him how difficult it would be to beat the Clintons. And the thing about Stephen Ricchetti, and we'll get to this, he was very loyal to the Clintons, very, very loyal to the Clinton. In fact, his nickname when he worked in the White House for the Clintons was Rodham Ricchetti. Okay, Hillary Rodham Clinton, Rodham Ricchetti. Very loyal. And then you'll see how they put all this together here in a few minutes. how they, it's kind of like something, out of The Godfather. It's also, we go back to historical times. You go back to the Teutoburg Forest, Arminius, the Romans, 6 AD in Germany. Arminius was hostage, held by the Romans as a kid, trained by the Romans as a kid. The Romans believed he was loyal to the Romans. They sent him up north there to work with the commander up there, Varus. He commanded of 3 legions, and Arminius, from a kid, still was German to the core, and led Varus into a trap, defeated the 3 legions. It was a brutal defeat for the Romans, one of the probably the second worst defeat they ever had in their history. So, and then if you look at like the movie The Godfather, Luca Brasi, when Don Corleone says, "Hey, I want you to go talk to," I can't remember the character's name in the movie. Let me take a look real quick. What is this? Oh yeah, he's Don, the Godfather. Marlon Brando sends Luca Brasi to talk to the Tattaglia family, and he tells Luca Brasi, "Pretend like you and I have had a falling out, and I want you to go work for the Tattaglia family to find out what's going on over there." Well, they smell something going on, so of course they kill Luca Brasi in the movie. But in 2008, supposedly Ricchetti, also known as Rodham Ricchetti, had a falling out with Clinton because he brought up supposedly an internal meeting. He brought up, hey, Hillary, you're running for president. We got to figure out how to deal with the fact they may bring up some of Bill's extramarital affairs, which of course Hillary had talked to Ricchetti about. Probably Bill had talked to Ricchetti about numerous times, and so they said, oh, now we have a falling out. And that was like the public display of a falling out, which was BS. It was a con job. He never left the Clintons. So with that said, you see here, we'll kind of go through the timeline, just kind of give you a little background there with Stephen Ricchetti. You'll see how this whole thing kind of plays out. So anyway, Joe Biden, his son in the case against a Ukraine oligarch. So let's take a look at this story real quick. All right. So this is by James Risen, December 8th, 2015. And the important part about that is the date, December 8th, 2015. This is before March of 2016 when Biden tells the Ukrainian president, hey, you got to fire this prosecutor. So anyway, so this is the New York Times writing this in December again. New York Times. This is not some conservative right-wing hit piece job. When Vice President Joseph Biden Jr. traveled to Kiev, Ukraine on Sunday for a series of meetings with the country's leaders, one of the issues on his agenda was to encourage a more aggressive fight against Ukraine's rampant corruption and stronger efforts to rein in the power of the oligarchs. But the credibility of the vice president's anti-corruption message may have been undermined by the association of his son, Hunter Biden, with one of Ukraine's largest natural gas companies, Burisma Holdings, and with its owner, Mykola Zalewski, who was Ukraine's ecology minister under former President Viktor Yanukovych before he was forced into exile. Hunter Biden, 45, is a former Washington lobbyist, joined the Burisma board in April of 2014. That month, as part of an investigation into money laundering, British officials froze London bank accounts containing $23 million that allegedly belonged to Zelensky. Britain's Serious Fraud Office, independent government agency, specifically forbade Zelensky as well as Burisma Holdings, the company's chief legal officer, and another company owned by Zelensky to have any access to the accounts. And that's kind of an important thing. So let's get to the next story here. This is kind of a New York Times. They did kind of a list here. This is from 2019, showing all the players. You see there's Hunter Biden on the left, and served on the board of Burisma Holdings. Biden is the son of the former Vice President Joseph R. Biden, started on the board of Burisma Holdings, an energy company owned by a Ukrainian oligarch, in the spring of 2014, paid about $50,000 per month. Then Mykola Zalewski, he's the owner of Burisma Holdings. He had served in the government of the former Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych. He fled the country not long after the collapse of Yanukovych's government in 2014, and the Ukrainian Prosecutor's General's Office opened multiple investigations into him and his businesses. This is Viktor Shonkin. This is what you hear the Hill talk about a lot. Shonkin's office had oversight of the investigations into Zalewski and his businesses, including Burisma. Some of the Obama administration supported the investigations, but worried Shonkin was not pursuing them. And then you have Joseph Biden, March of, now remember this is the Times, so they can put a little slant on this, their own slant here. This is now 2019, Biden's running for president. Of course, they want to get rid of Donald Trump. So, anyway, March of 2016, Biden issued an ultimatum to Ukrainian parliament to dismiss Mr. Shankin, or the United States would withhold $1 billion in loan guarantees. Shankin was voted out by the parliament. Well, voted out by the parliament, but let's be honest, he was actually voted out by the president, because that's when Biden went over there and said, okay, this guy's not fired. I'm withholding $1 billion in loan and loan aid guarantees. Now, the person who put that together at the State Department was V.Nuland. And you're going to see this coming up here later. Now, in December of 2015, after this story came out on the Times, Joe Biden and his partner, Joe Biden had Hunter Biden had a meeting with V.Nuland at the State Department regarding another $1 billion aid guarantee to the Ukrainians. And he figured he wanted to get in on that to try to give his company something, some positive spin on the story, give himself positive spin. Well, the person he met with at the State Department was V.Nuland. That's who he met with. And this name will pop up later. And then we have the next guy, Yuri Lushenko. He was a subsequent prosecutor. He initially continued the investigating Zelensky and Burisma, but cleared him of all charges within 10 months of taking office. Now, see, that's important, because everybody says at the time Biden went over there, there was no investigation. The investigation of Burisma had been closed, and everything was done. Well, even the Times, in writing this article here in 2019, says he cleared Zolevsky and Burisma Holdings 10 months after taking office. We took office like the day after Biden, got the prosecutor fired. So the investigation wasn't closed for another 10 months. And we talked about this. I talked about this in another video, where the criminal case was closed in September of 2016, about 6-7 months after Biden had the prosecutor fired. So there was an ongoing investigation. The attorneys for Burisma Holdings, one was a United States attorney, formerly worked with the Justice Department, was a pretty high-up guy with the Justice Department, really top-notch attorney in New York, and I believe his name was Beretta, and not like Beretta, but Buretta. He was like the lead attorney for Burisma Holdings, and he actually wanted a meeting with Lushenko and I believe the temporary prosecutor also, after Shankin was fired, which meant that the investigation was ongoing. So in September, they closed a criminal case, but this is where it gets tricky. Even the Kiev press, the Ukrainian press, didn't buy it. The Kiev Post interviewed Beretta, the attorney, and what happened was they supposedly closed the criminal case in September. Well, there was a tax, let's see what he's saying. Back taxes case also that was kind of piggybacking on with the criminal case. It was kind of like a throw the spaghetti against the wall. It's more like just kind of, well, let's just piggyback this in. It's kind of a default position. So sure enough, they don't close the tax case until January of 2017. And in that back taxes case, they said, the company owes $90 million, $90 million US dollars. And Burisma agreed to pay the government $90 million US dollars. And so what that was, even the Kiev Post says, hey, look, was that really back taxes? Was that really some kind of a fine or payoff to the government on the criminal side? So in other words, like, okay, so they get away with not having to plead guilty, but they still have to pay a fine of $90 million, and we'll just fold it into the tax case and say that was just a civil tax penalty. So even the writer for the Kiev Post, who pretty good reporter, asked Beretta, the attorney, hey, wasn't that really just pay off the fine for the criminal case to make the criminal case go away, and you guys just stalled it out for a couple of months to want to look like a quid pro quo, that kind of thing? And he goes, oh, no, the two cases were totally separate. There was auditors and stuff, and no, two totally separate cases. Well, no, nobody bought it in Ukraine. So when everybody says, when Biden told this guy to fire the prosecutor, there was no investigation into Hunter Biden's company that he sat on the board on, Burisma, that's a complete lie. Even the Times is saying this guy, Lushenko, didn't close the case till 10 months later. So from March, 10 months later, January 2017. And then, of course, Rudy Giuliani, he's out there, and you'll see why he's investigating this whole Biden thing, because this is where the whole thing starts as far as the 2016 election. You're going to see a lot of the same players here. You can see Chalupa, Alexandra Chalupa. You're going to see, again, S.Ricchetti. You're going to see V.Nuland. You're going to see a lot of the same players involved in the 2016 with the Ukrainians trying to put their thumb on the scale to give Clinton the election in 2016 over Donald Trump. Forget the Steele dossier, real classic Ukrainian foreign interference in a U.S. election. And the DNC had somebody working with the Ukrainian embassy, and Ukraine even has apologized for interfering in our election. Since say, hey, we're sorry, that was a different administration, it wasn't us, we're sorry, it won't happen again. And one of the reasons Trump wanted to get to the bottom of what was going on, because this is where his whole thing starts, with Hunter Biden, Joe Biden going over there and pushing some muscle on the Ukrainian government, getting them to fire a prosecutor. This is where the whole corruption begins. This is where all the players get put on the board, if you will, on chessboard. This is where everything starts. So Rudy Giuliani is looking for defense, against Trump by trying to say, well, look, here's a real corruption. This is the Clinton campaign, the DNC using foreign governments to interfere in our election. It wasn't us, it was them. Well, of course, you got to start with Hunter Biden. You got to start with Joe Biden, because this is where the whole thing starts in the Ukraine. And you got to, and then that goes back to V.Nuland, who then subsequently meets with C.Steele to get information from Steele on the Steele dossier. And Nuland's the one who meets with Hunter Biden in 2015. She's the one who put together the big aid package also in 2014. That Biden, when he went over there, said, if you don't fire this guy, 2016. If you don't fire this guy, he's gone. So that was the aid package. There was also a previous aid package put together in 2014. I'm sorry. So anyway, let's get to the next story here. All right, so this is regarding V.Nuland. This is from Wikipedia. There's a picture of her from, well, you can't see it. I'm over it. Well, it's a picture when she was much younger. So you'll see what she looks like right now. So regarding V.Nuland, it goes on, in her role as Assistant Secretary for I think it was Eastern European Affairs, Eurasian Affairs. In her role as Assistant Secretary, she managed diplomatic relations with 50 countries in Europe and Eurasia, as well as with NATO, the European Union, and the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. She was the lead U.S. point person for the Ukrainian crisis. Nuland was a key figure in establishing loan guarantees to Ukraine, including $1 billion loan guarantee in 2014, and she also put together the loan guarantee that Biden, quote-unquote, had in his pocket in 2016. She was the point person on that. So let's take a look here. And here's a picture here of V.Nuland. She's there meeting with some, Assistant Secretary for European and Eurasian Affairs, V.Nuland, talks with the Ukrainian Border Guard generals in a state border guard service in Kiev. And then she gave a talk on, this is in March of 2015, gives a talk regarding Ukraine and corruption and border security and stuff like that. So that's her right there. Then, let's see. This commercial. All right. Let's see. So this is, I have Susan. Okay, this is regarding here. Let's see. Back up a little bit. This is from The Hills, from John Solomon. And let's see here. Right. So Biden, and he recounts the New York Times, Biden has faced scrutiny since December 2015, when the New York Times published a story noting that Burisma hired Hunter Biden just weeks after the vice president was asked by President Obama to oversee U.S.-Ukraine relations. The story also alerted Biden's office that Prosecutor General Victor Shokin had an active investigation of Burisma and his founder. And let's see, this is the important part here. Hunter Biden's American business partner in Burisma, Devon Archer, this a few days after the article in the Times came out, texted a colleague 2 days after the Times story about his strategy to counter the new, quote-unquote, new wave of scrutiny. Instead of that, he and Hunter Biden had just met at the State Department. Well, guess who they met with? V.Nuland. The text suggested that there was about to be a new U.S. aid project for the embassy, that the embassy is announcing with, quote-unquote, us, and that it was, quote-unquote, perfect for us to move forward now with momentum. And then John Solomon with The Hill said he has sued the State Department for any record. So you see V.Nuland all through this, all up and down this. And she's very close to the Clintons, very close with S.Ricchetti, and a whole bunch of other people we'll get to here in a sec. So anyway, this, in fact, your U.S. signs third $1 billion loan guarantee. This is from June 6th of 2016, agreement for Ukraine. This is a picture of the ambassador to Ukraine, Jeffrey Pyatt. He's in this, according to the title under the picture, is seen before U.S. Assistant Secretary of State V.Nuland's news conference at the U.S. Embassy in Kiev, February 7th, 2014. There you go. And let's see, and here comes Victoria Nuland again. So sometime in the later half of 2014, Steele began to informally provide reports he had prepared for a private client to the State Department. One of the recipients of the reports was Victoria Nuland, Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs. Ta-da! So, interesting. And now this is where we get to meet Miss Alexandra Chalupa. And the important thing about her is that she went to work for the Clintons back in, I believe, 1998 as an intern in the White House. Go figure. Not the other one, but no, this one here. And while she was there, she met S.Ricchetti, who had just returned back to the White House to be the hatchet man during the Clinton impeachment hearings. His job was to keep the Democrats in the House and the Senate in line, if you will. So basically, he was the hatchet man. He went over there, pretty much leaned on people, did whatever he had to do to make sure that people didn't vote to either to impeach or to convict President Clinton at the time. And so Ms. Chalupa here, this was a story by Yahoo News, 16 people who shaped the 2016 election, Alexandra Chalupa. And by November 9th, the votes will have been cast and counted. There will be a winner and a loser. The country will begin to a slow return to normal. Historians will have their say. There's a handful of people. So they describe, this is again before all the controversy really kind of heated up to breakneck speed. As a Democratic Party consultant and proud Ukrainian American, Alexandra Chalupa was outraged last spring when Donald Trump named Paul Manafort. And Chalupa, who was in charge of Democratic National Committee's ethnic, quote, and then even they put in ethnic, even Yahoo News puts a quote around it, ethnic outreach efforts. Basically, she wasn't in charge of the ethnic outreach. She was over there getting Ukrainians to assist her in digging up dirt on Trump or any Trump campaign officials, including Manafort and anybody else you get her hands on. And she was working with the DNC, so she was the DNC, Hillary Clinton. Of course, Hillary Clinton, because she worked for the Clintons back in the White House back in the 90s. And once you're in the Clinton family, you never leave. I don't think you're allowed to, actually. So, nonetheless, ethnic outreach, basically digging up dirt. And see how much money they had paid her. I'm trying to remember if they have that in this story. Nope, not in this story. All right, let's get to the next story. All right, so here we go. This talks more about Chalupa here. So this says, Manafort's work for Yovanovitch. Let's find out who wrote this here real quick. Let's go back up and take a look. This is by Politico. Here we go. Okay, Manafort's work for Yovanovitch caught the attention of a veteran Democratic operative named Alexandra Chalupa, who had worked in the White House Office of Public Liaison during the Clinton administration. Chalupa went on to work as a staffer, then as a consultant for the Democratic National Committee. DNC paid her $412,000 from 2004 to June of 2016, according to the Federal Election Commission records, though she was also paid by other clients during that time, including Democratic campaigns and the DNC's arm for engaging expatriate Democrats around the world. So she got paid a buku bunch of bucks, to put it that way. So, anyway, that lets you know what she was up to. Then now we're going to finally get to Mr. S.Ricchetti, who now works for Joe Biden as chief strategist. Was at one point he went to work as office of counselor for Joe Biden in the White House, and then became his chief of staff as vice president in the White House. And again, he was known as Rodham Ricchetti, because he was so close to the Clintons. But again, he did that little fake, like, we're not getting along, and you're banished, and then Biden fell for it, and he kind of worked his way back into the White House. I think he went to work, I want to say, for Leon Panetta at one point, and then kind of worked his way through and eventually landed a job as counselor for Joe Biden, and then eventually chief of staff. Now, in order for that to happen, pieces had to be moved around, and we'll get to that in a second. In other words, he can't just, if there's somebody in there already, like you had, I think his name was Ron well, I'll get to it in a second, but you had one guy in there who started with Biden as his chief of staff. Well, he has to kind of go because he's in the way, because they want to get this Ricchetti guy to be Biden's chief of staff. So he can not just spy on him, but sabotage whatever he's going to do, getting close to him, and then end up working on the campaign, which he now is chief strategist. And we notice this campaign stumbles around a lot, not so much because Biden stumbles, but it just doesn't seem like it doesn't have any cohesive message. Well, that's from the campaign management. I mean, that's where the message comes from. All the sayings that Barack Obama used in 2008, that didn't come from Barack Obama. That came from, Plouffe and Axelrod and those guys. That comes from the campaign. Organizing rallies where more than 3 people show up. That's the campaign management team. And that's Ricchetti. So anyway, here's this from Wikipedia. In September 1998, Ricchetti returned to the White House where he was tasked with handling relations with congressional Democrats amidst the impeachment proceedings against President Clinton. In January 1999, Ricchetti became a deputy White House chief of staff, succeeding John Podesta, and gained a larger portfolio. So then now in March 2012, here we go here. In March 2012, he's appointed to counselor to Vice President Joe Biden. And then after that, let's see here, in December of 2013, Ricchetti succeeded Bruce Reed as chief of staff to the vice president. So you have to kind of see, okay, what happened? Why did Bruce Reed leave? And there was a guy before him. Why did he leave? Let's see, his name is Ron Klain. Ron Klain started off with him. Then it went to Bruce Reed. And then magically, Ricchetti's in line to become chief of staff, even though he's loyal to the Clintons, meaning that he's probably going to know all the ins and outs of what Biden's doing while he's vice president and planning to run for president in 2016, and what he's going to do once he's there. So let's take a look to see how they move the pieces around. Okay, first let's start with Ron Klain. Here's Ron Klain. Let's see, make sure here. All right, Ron Klain is chief of staff. Well, suddenly Ron Klain needs to go because Ron Klain gets offered a job by Steve Case, also known as the guy who started AOL, a gazillionaire. Washington, January 4, 2011. Ron Klain, currently assistant to the president and chief of staff to Vice President Joe Biden, will leave the White House to become president of Case Holdings, holding company of AOL co-founder Steve Case. Now, it's a lot of bucks. So they basically offer this guy a shitload of money to leave. And let's take a look at something here. I think you might find this interesting. Let's take a look. And look at that. And that's Steve Case there, and there's Hillary Clinton. And I got a whole bunch of other photos, but you actually have to pay for these so you don't get a copyright thing on them. I had to pay for this one. So I don't want to pay for all the other ones with Steve Case and Hillary together. But here they are back in the 90s. And he even wrote a little op-ed as far as why he was voting for her and everything else under the sun, blah, blah, blah. So there's a picture of Steve Case with Hillary Clinton. So basically they get Steve Case to offer Klain a job to split because they want to put one of their guys in. Okay? So they do. They put one of their guys in. So let's see which guy they put in. Well, hold on a second. Let me get to it here. Let's see. Well, they put in Bruce Reed. And Reed here from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. But you see there's a picture of him. Now, he doesn't look like a real, tough kind of guy. He's not real tough. And you see here in the description, I'll bring it up so you can actually see it. He was preceded by Ron Klain, and then, of course, succeeded by Steve Ricchetti. So, he was from January 14th, 2011 to December 2013. So, even though he's a Clinton guy, he needs a reason to go, right? We got to get rid of him because we want Ricchetti in there because Ricchetti's the real hatchet guy. He's the guy we used to hatchet guy during the impeachment proceedings to keep the Democrats in line so Bill Clinton didn't lose the job and get voted convicted at the trial in the Senate. He's your hatchet guy. He's the guy you want to work. You can't put him in right away because it's too obvious. So you got to kind of work him in there. So they got to find a place for Mr. Bruce Reed to go to. So let's see where they send him. Let's see if we can find it here. They send him to work for this guy, Eli Broad, in the Clintons Update. So anyway, they make a bunch of money working for the Broad Foundation. So And here's a story from December 22nd, 2015. It's from Schools Matter. This is an outfit that doesn't like what Eli Broad. Eli Broad was a big fan of charter schools, even though Clinton always seeks the support of the teachers union. Well, there's a lot of money at stake on these charter schools, and when Clinton smells money, she runs for it. But anyway, this guy, Eli Broad, actually, Hillary Clinton was once his attorney. That's how far back they go. And you'll see a little story here. But anyway, the job they get Mr. Bruce Reed to leave Vice President's Chief of Staff position is to go and run this Eli Broad Foundation, getting paid boo, 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 coo bucks. Okay, so anyway, so this is Eli Broad. So anyway, on Sunday, September 18, hundreds of supporters of public schools rallied in L.A. to protest corporate education reformer Eli Broad as he opened his new museum. The Broad is a museum designed to show to the world Eli Broad's trophy acquisitions from the contemporary art market. Tigers' heads bagged from a notoriously wild and lawless economic jungle. Protesters were not on the Broad to protest the crass commercialization of art. However, they took the opportunity to protest their outrage at what Broad would like to do to public schools in L.A. Eli Broad and corporate education reform backers plan to spend $490 million in an attempt to turn over half of L.A. public schools to charters in the next 8 years. In the museum were 700 invited guests, celebrities, artists, art collectors, and arts professionals. Topping the list was former President Bill Clinton. The LA Times reported on the gala event had a reveling off-the-cuff comment by Bill Clinton. This is what Bill Clinton said about Eli Broad, who just magically gives to Bruce Reed a job to come work for him and run his foundation. Go figure. So that Steve Ricchetti can become chief of staff to the vice president. So this is what Bill Clinton said about Eli Broad, kind of off-the-cuff statement. On his friendship with the Broads, Clinton turned to them and asked, "What year did you come and sit in the living room with me?" Edie Broad, that's Eli's wife, noted that Clinton daughter Chelsea, now an active figure in the Clinton Foundation and the Clinton Global Initiative, had been a baby at the time, and that Hillary Rodham Clinton, a Democratic presidential candidate and former Secretary of State, had been Eli's lawyer. After settling on 1983, Clinton said, this is what he says after they figured it was 1983 when they first met, Clinton said, "I looked up one day and Eli was in my living room, and my life has never been the same." So obviously, Eli did a lot to help Bill Clinton get elected, and was going to be working for Hillary as well. So this confirms that Eli Broad's relationship with the Clintons has existed for over 30 years. Bill Clinton was governor of Arkansas at the time. Eli Broad was the owner of the retirement savings company Sun America. And there's all kinds of deals they did together on that. I mean, it's just whatever. But anyway, so Bruce Reed goes to work for this guy and have a nice day. So that's where he ends up going. So they got rid of him. Well, now you have, let me get this back here. Hold on. So now you have Bruce Reed out. You have Stephen Ricchetti has managed to get himself to be counselor to the vice president. So he's next in line, if you will, to be chief of staff, and he gets chosen to be chief of staff. So welcome, Steve Ricchetti, to Spycraft world, now spying on Joe Biden. And of course, let's get back here. And let's see. And here's a little piece regarding Steve Ricchetti. You can see the back of his head there. So this is what I was talking about earlier. This was the con job where they said Bill Clinton didn't get along with Steve Ricchetti, or Hillary Clinton didn't get along with him anymore. So he was banished from Clinton world. Able to weasel his way through the White House staff positions, to weasel his way into the vice president's office, to become his chief of staff, and his chief strategist for the 2016 campaign, which never got started, and now his chief strategist for Joe Biden's 2020 campaign, which seems to be having all kinds of fundraising problems and everything else. So here's the con job they put out. Bill Clinton never quite forgave him for raising, in an internal meeting, the question of what they were going to do if someone made an issue of his infidelities. Ricchetti was trying to be helpful to anticipate the question. Clinton did not take it well. Okay. Now, if you believe that, that's bullshit. Clinton probably bragged. You can say, just there's the picture of these two guys here. Let me raise it up a little bit for you. He's like, hey, Ricchetti, like, hey, like, yeah. I mean, come on. These guys talked, a lot of locker room talk with each other, I'm sure. I'm sure Clinton talked about a lot of his exploits with them. So it's like when Ricchetti brought it up, he says, okay, pretty much like, okay, what's our plan to deal with this? Okay, Bill, everybody in the room, we all know, okay, fine. Now, Bill, we got to come up with a plan. When somebody starts asking about it, what are we going to do? And so supposedly that's what pissed Bill Clinton off. Really, that pissed Bill Clinton off. He was pissed off about that. If you buy that, fine, but I don't, and nobody should because that's bullshit. Okay, no, come on, he didn't like he's upset. I mean, he probably was talking more about his infidelities to everybody. He's probably bragging about them to everybody that would listen. Hey, let me tell you about this. 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 And then he goes, oh, by the way, well, how do we deal with this for the press? Oh, I'm mad at you. Why did you even mention it? Huh? Of course not. That was just a con job. And Biden, of course, bought it. And that's why now Steve Ricchetti's in on the Biden chief strategist for the campaign, which is having a hard time raising money, which is weird. And seems to be missing up a lot of stops. Seems to be showing up to places with only a few people at the event. That's all campaign management stuff. Getting people to an event. That's, you don't need millions of people to support you to get people to an event. That's just pre-planning. Okay, that's easy. So Ricchetti's in there because, as H.A. Goodman would say, Hillary's running in 2020. Hillary's running in 2020, and so he's got to clear the way. He cleared the way in 2016. He got rid of Biden in 2016 for her to run then. Biden still doesn't realize what this guy is up to, what he's doing in there, but now he's going to make sure that Biden doesn't even have a chance to do anything in 2020. So let's take a look here. Let's go and continue on with this story. All right. All right, and let's show here. We're talking about the Biden campaign struggling. This is from Time Magazine. Why Joe Biden's campaign is struggling? On a warm Friday afternoon, July, Joe Biden stood under a tent. Well, that's nice. On the banks of the Cochise. People still rally like this. Trying to rally a crowd of 200 behind his presidential campaign. Biden's staff had handed him a speech and positioned teleprompters on stage, but he wasn't in the mood to follow the script, so he removed the prompters, and Biden tossed the printed speech aside. I've got a nice speech here for you, but I'm going to take the time, he told the crowd. I'm going to try to shorten this up for you. And off he went, literally and figuratively, pacing the lawn over the course of a 36-minute riff, instead of focusing on policy prescriptions, such as is called the triple federal funding, for low-income schools. Biden noted that his home state of Delaware had more minorities than New Hampshire. He emphasized policy proposals, blah, blah, blah. The speech was a snapshot of the challenge facing Biden's campaign 6 months before the Iowa caucuses. Biden looks like the shakiest frontrunner in years. Every poll still shows him running atop the Democratic field. So, this kind of goes into, again, a lot of this campaign stuff. You got to be able to keep your candidate in line. Obviously, that's not happening. And also now, here comes the fundraising problem. And this is all campaign. This should not be a problem. Biden entered the fourth quarter with significantly less money than his top competitors filing show. Former VP Joe Biden's presidential campaign struggled to gain financial steam in the past 3 months, spending money at a faster clip and having a smaller campaign war chest than his top competitors, according to the new filings released Tuesday night. Vice President entered his final quarter of 2019 with significantly less cash on hand than other candidates who are leading in polls or fundraising, and a share of low-dollar donations, which can signal enthusiasm for his candidacy, was significantly lower. So he's raised less money, actually, than, I believe, I know Elizabeth Warren, I know Bernie Sanders, and I believe even Mayor Pete Buttigieg. Again, that's all campaign stuff. That's all Stephen Ricchetti stuff. So, I think when it comes to Giuliani investigating Biden and Hunter Biden and finding what's going on and how all this thing started with V.Nuland and with Burisma and everything, and then how that led to Chalupa and Ricchetti, I think Giuliani is well within his right to be investigating Biden to find out how this whole thing started, which turned out with Chalupa and the DNC and Hillary Clinton's team using Ukraine to interfere in the U.S. election. That's true. That's the way it happened. And you know what? The Ukrainians have admitted to that. They apologized for it. They apologized for their people being involved, interfering in our election in 2016. So when it comes to Giuliani investigating Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, V.Nuland, all those people at the very beginning there back in 2014, 2015, 2016, he's well within his right to do that. And it only makes sense because if you don't start from there, then you kind of start it like in media res. You kind of start in the middle of the story. You kind of need to go back to find the whole story. So when it comes to things about Biden and getting Shokin fired, why did that happen? how is the money tied to it? Who put the money together at state? Then state's meeting with Hunter Biden in Victoria Nuland is also meeting with Hunter Biden in 2015, and then meeting with Christopher Steele in 2016. I mean, there's just too much going on there, way too much going on. So, there's a lot to look at. In fact, let me see if I can find that one story real quick from here. Let's see, where was it? Let's see. Here we go. So sometime in the later, all right, we already talked about this. 2014, Steele was meeting with Victoria Nuland at the State Department. So that's pretty serious stuff, So anyway, we got another part of this story to cover here in a second. We talk about some civil servants and a few other players here in the Clinton campaign, the Clinton machine. Again, this is inspired by H.A. Goodman's reporting on the Clinton machine. It got me curious, made me want to start thinking and looking into some things here and see what I can come up with. But anyway, so just give me a few minutes, and I will be right back. Thanks, guys. Hey everybody, I'm back, and anyway, thanks for waiting there. Okay, and we're going to cover part two here. This is kind of like the Clinton machine kind of part of the aspect, even further into it, as far as who some of these players are and stuff like that. And the one thing I wanted you to look at here first was this video put on by United States State Department, and it shows kind of like the character of the kind of people who go to work for like the State Department, who go to work for the Defense Department, the kind of people who go to work for the Central Intelligence Agency, as far as the bureaucrats, the civil servants that work in there, kind of like how they think they're more important than they really are. And you can see this woman here giving an interview, kind of telling everybody how important she is in her little 10-foot by 10-foot cubicle office. If it's that big, typical furniture, typical, government-issued desk, and got boxes underneath. But yeah, she gets to travel around the world and gets to tell people what to do. And if she's in the private sector, with her level of skill set or education, probably wouldn't get that far. But in the public sector, you get to get really far. And then even when the guys go into the private sector, it's really not the private sector. We'll show you this in a few minutes. It's really a public-private sector. They're advising people. They're being paid money for access. People they work with in the State Department, Defense Department, Pentagon, that kind of stuff, in the agent, CIA and security. And they use that to make a ton of money from that. But anyway, here's kind of an idea of what we're talking about here. So let's take a look here. Again, this is from the U.S. State Department, United States Diplomacy Center. There you go.
My name is Greta Holtz. I'm the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State in the Near East Asia Bureau for Public Diplomacy and Strategic Communications. The Bureau manages the relations between the United States and the countries of the Middle East. So our job is to help formulate policy toward those countries, to explain that policy through our embassies to the countries or to domestic audience, and to support our embassies in the field in implementing our national security strategy and our foreign policy goals for those countries. Diplomacy is, to me, it is the art of shaping the operational environment in which you find yourself to be able to execute the country's foreign policy goals, and also helping to shape those goals to achieve our national security interests. One thing I would like people to know about diplomacy when it comes to Iraq is that it's not like 20th century diplomacy. It's 21st century diplomacy, where you have to be very operational. You have to be able to harness all the instruments of national power at your fingertips, and they're all out there to get something done. Working in areas of conflict, conducting diplomacy, it's harder, because you have to take security into consideration. You cannot necessarily go where you want to go, when you want to go. If you do go, certainly in a place like Iraq or Afghanistan, or even in Pakistan, Yemen, different places these days, your profile is very high. So you can't just slip down and have a cup of coffee or chai or tea with your normal contacts. You have to bring a whole, regiment of people to protect you. So you are, and even staying in the embassy, it's walled, it's harder for people to get in. So it's a lot harder to be low profile, to get out and about. And I think it's harder for some people to deal with the stress of working in a kinetic or semi-permissive environment. People get hurt, people get killed, so that's an added stress factor. You have to take protection of your team, your staff, your colleagues into consideration in everything you do. So it's tougher. What's the most difficult challenge I've had to face in my career? Probably doing all the things I needed to do in whatever assignment it was with not enough resources. Not enough staff, not enough money, not enough time, so limited resources with an ever-expanding job.
And there you have it. He's saying, what do I need? I need more money, more staff, more power, more importance. That's what I need. And if I don't have all those things, well then, it's not gonna work out. So so anyway, let's take a look here at, this is Philip Reines, who used to work for the Clintons, and, actually, as I said before, never stopped working for the Clintons. But I want you to hear this exchange he has with Tucker. Tucker interviewed him, and then Dana Perino came on afterwards, and she was shocked by the fact that this guy was bringing up that, Clinton was running, had not ruled out running for president again. And you can hear, like, the disconnect between Carlson and Dana Perino and this guy. This guy's an insider, and Perino, they're not. And that's not an insult. That's actually probably a compliment. They're not insiders. They don't understand the whole machine thing. They report on stuff. They see things from the outside. They don't realize what's really been moving and shaking here for the last, 8 years, 12 years, whatever years. That pretty much, like H.A. Goodman says, Clinton hasn't stopped running for president. And, she was always planning on running in 2020. And this is one of her guys going out there, saying it's, she hasn't ruled it out, hoping that then people will come and beg her to run because, Biden's fallen to pieces, thanks to another Clinton confidant, S.Ricchetti. And, there's nobody left in the center, and the people on the far left, Sanders and Warren, they're not electable. The corporate Dems have already said they're either not going to give her money, or they're going to support Trump, or they're going to just stay home. One of those. So, here's this guy. We'll kind of go into him in a little bit. This is Philip Reines, worked directly for the Clintons, and then formed a business venture an advisory group, and that advisory group got all the seed money from another Clinton big-time donor, and their biggest client was Hillary Clinton. And they also advise people for, again, they get paid for access. So let's take a look at this little exchange with Tucker Carlson, Philip Reines, and Dana Perino.
Thank you. Dana Perino hosts the Daily Briefing, of course, with Dana Perino, also star of the Five. She joins us today.
Tucker, I need some help.
Yes.
Because I mean, he's here listening.
Yes.
And I don't have a DVR, so I can't rewind. Philippe did not close the door on Hillary Clinton thinking and being open to running in 2020. Do I have that right?
Absolutely not. We spoke about it before. We talked about it on the show. He's still sitting right here. He's nodding like this. Hillary Clinton, he's not saying she's going to run, but he said very clearly, under certain circumstances, she would be happy to get in.
Wow.
What do you think of that?
Well, look, so Philippe, I know that he doesn't, maybe he's not an official spokesperson anymore, but just like if somebody were to say to me, would George W. Bush think about running again? And if I said that, then people would take it very seriously. I think I just feel a little stunned right now because I thought that this was just, rumor mongering, or you had establishment people in the...
See, and you can hear Perino saying, well, I know you're not an official spokesman anymore. She doesn't quite get it. She doesn't understand that these people are with the Clintons from day one, and they're still with them. They've never left them. So even she's naive to the point of saying, well, I know you're not with the Clintons anymore. You're out doing your own thing. Well, his own thing is this company called, I believe, Global Strategies, or actually Beacon Global Strategies. And again, that was a company started with, I want to say Jeremy Bash and Philip Reines and I believe Andrew Shapiro, not to be mixed up with Ben Shapiro. And these were all Clinton people. You see Jeremy Bash, he's on CNN, MSNBC all the time, bashing, if you will, President Trump all the time. And again, offering his expert opinion on why President Trump is messing up Syria and why we should be in Syria, even though they represent people, defense contractors, who, of course, the only way they make money is to have to rebuild and replace units that have been previously destroyed, preferably in combat. The only thing is when you blow up a tank, you have to replace that tank, then there's 4 or 5, Americans inside of it that got blown up with it. But, that's not important for these people. No, that's why they want us in Syria, Iran, everywhere, because, it supports their clients who pay them a ton of money for access to get deals done. And what you see a lot of these people not liking is the fact that, when Trump came into office, one, he doesn't need their counsel, doesn't need their advice, doesn't want their advice. You hear people say, oh, he's not following our policy. Well, he doesn't need to follow their policy. He just picks up the phone and calls people. And as you see, the famous phone call to the Ukrainian president, but he'll pick up the phone and call Z and whatever. And he doesn't need a State Department or a Pentagon or, intelligence briefing on how we should talk to Z, what kind of person Z is. He knows Z. He knows those players in China because he's been doing business in China for years. He knows the players in Europe. Again, he's been doing business with people in Europe for years. He doesn't need anybody to tell him what he should say to them and what not to say to them. And of course, that now these people at the State Department, all these professionals, they're not needed. And he lets them know that every single day. Well, of course, that proves their ego. The whole reason why they got into government was so they could, feel important, with a little bachelor's degree, and which gets you nowhere. Again, it'd be like if you're an iron worker and you stayed a third period apprentice, or carpenter, you stayed a third period apprentice for 30 years. That's like having a bachelor's degree if you want to be a professional. You need a master's. Minimally, you need a master's, JD, something, PhD, whatever, to do anything in the private sector. But you get to feel important, be important with just a bachelor's degree, and then you can earn a JD or something later on, whatever the case may be. So anyway, let's continue on here. So you can tell she's like, she doesn't understand. I mean, H.J. Goodman understands this. He understands these people never leave the Clinton machine. They're with it forever. And so you hear her, just like, I know you're not a Clinton spokesman. Well, of course he is. What do you think he's doing on TV right now? You think he's on TV right now promoting Beacon Global Strategies? No, he's promoting Hillary Clinton, which he's never stopped doing. And you got Ricchetti over there working as a spy in the Biden campaign, destroying that campaign. Like he convinced Biden not to run in 2016. Biden's running, couldn't convince him out of it. And so now he's got to just work to pretty much, take Biden down, which is pretty sad, how that's playing out. But, you got to clear the way for Hillary Clinton. So anyway, let's continue on here.
Democratic Party worried that there's nobody in this very large field of which you can't even figure out a way to do 2 debate stages to fill all of them in a room, that they still think that they have to look around for somebody else. I just read a story in the magazine called The Week that says even Oprah is unhappy, unsatisfied, worried that there's nobody in this field that could beat Donald Trump.
The Hillary thing is totally real. Doesn't mean she'll do it.
Yeah.
But the possibility is totally real.
I just don't know whether if they're wasting our time in thinking about it, because you got to get on the ballot. And I also do think that Elizabeth Warren might have an opening here. One of the things that she could do is say, I see what's happening here.
You know, and you hear Dana talking all this peripheral stuff like, gee, Elizabeth Warren may have an opening here. Look, I agree with H.A. Goodman on this. Hillary Clinton gets in, she devastates the rest of the field. I mean, they're gone. Warren's gone. Sanders is gone. Buttigieg is gone. I mean, they're all gone. I mean, she just walks right in, and she can outraise them 4, 5, 10 times to 1. Okay, I mean, she raised $1.2 billion in 2016. Trust me, she'll go right out there, like H.A. Goodman says, probably raise $2 billion. Well, you know, or even say she raised 1.5. I mean, none of these other candidates can raise that kind of money, and Warren's not going to get that kind of money either, and neither will Sanders. So, you know, these people on Wall Street and the corporate Dems, you know, they hate Trump. Don't get me wrong, they really do, but they only hate him to a certain point. And if you're going to try to start instituting a wealth tax, which is unconstitutional, like a per head tax, if you have a certain amount of money, you get taxed, not on income, but just because you have money sitting in your bank account or you own some expensive things, you know, these guys aren't going for that. And, you know, they're just not. It's not going to happen. But you see here, even Perino kind of like, you know, not understanding, oh, gee, this might be an opening for Warren. Maybe they're wasting our time. Well, first of all, Philip Reines isn't getting on TV. He's not getting on Fox. He went on Fox, by the way. Now, you notice you didn't hear anybody criticize Philip Reines for going on Fox. Remember, anybody that's gone on Fox from the Democrat side has been criticized. Oh, why would you go on Fox? You're a sellout. Well, nobody's saying that about Philip Reines. How are they? But he went first show he goes on is Fox. Before he went on CNN, before he went on MSNBC, he went on Fox. And there was no criticism from the left, from anybody, from CNN or MSNBC, that Philip Reines was over there. Because Philip Reines is a player, he's a Clinton player, and you don't mess with the Clintons. Okay, NBC News, pretty much, it was, you know, the Wasserman Schultz and friends ripped off Bernie Sanders, and then I can't remember the guy's name over at NBC, Noel Oppenheim, I think, the one who called the primary race 2 days before the voting in California took place in the Democrat primary in 2016. They were running neck and neck, and there was just a few points between them, between Clinton and Sanders, and they come out and say, well, we took a poll of the superdelegates, and we now say that Hillary Clinton is the presumptive nominee of the party. She wins. So what that did is suppressed a lot of Sanders people from coming out to vote, because they figured, why vote? He already lost, you know. There you go. So, you know, these people don't do anything on accident. Okay, if Philip Reines is out here talking, it's not an accident. Again, he's not out here promoting, you know, Beacon Global Strategies, LLC. He's out there promoting the Clintons. Okay. She's taking care of them, and this is how the family works. So here we go.
Here, the establishment, they're afraid of me. They want to shut off the opportunity for me because they're afraid that I'm going to strip them of their power because I want to change how things are done. I'm going to be the disruptor from the left. She might be able to figure out a way to get in there and make that argument like President Trump did during the primaries.
I don't think there's any question about it. I mean, so maybe Democratic donors are discovering what Republican donors learned in 2016, which is, you know, you can spend all your time creating the perfect candidate in the laboratory, but if voters don't want to vote for the person, he's not going to be the nominee.
That's right. So you could almost see like a Never Warren movement, right? But that would be coming from the Democrats, right, if they were willing to do that. But Tucker, another thing that happened today, despite the month that he's had, Joe Biden getting attacked from a few Democrats, but
anyway, so it was just funny kind of watching this exchange. So anyway, let's go ahead and get to let's see, we get to up here. We're going to get to, this is POGO, Project on Government Oversight, and they wrote a letter to Beacon Global Strategies, LLC, attention to the General Counsel's office back in October of 2018. And it kind of goes into the revolving door, if you will, from Clinton administration, Clinton friends, to this company, which is now lobbying and getting access for their defense contractor clients. And the people on this list are pretty interesting. So let's take a look at that. All right, so this is from Project on Government Oversight. So it's going to take a look at this story. And it's a letter they wrote. Anyway, so they say the Project on Government Oversight is creating a Department of Defense. Let's see here if I can make this a little bit bigger. Maybe, I don't make it too big, but let's see. Maybe that works. We'll see. All right. Project on Government Oversight is creating a department, and let me double check, make sure I'm not covering up. Nope. Okay. Is creating a Department of Defense revolving door database on its website, which compiles information from public resources regarding former senior Department of Defense officials and military officers who went on to work for government contractors, including Beacon Global Strategies, from 2008 to present. The database is an attempt to track individuals when they leave the Department of Defense. An inclusion in the database does not represent anything illegal or a violation of ethics rules. I'm enclosed the findings relevant to Beacon Global Strategies and am requesting verification or refutation of the data from you. Any response as the accuracy of this information is in the best interest of all parties. So, you know, please be assured that a fairness in response will be posted on the website. If you have any questions, I can reach that. So anyway, here's the revolving door. They go through the different people who work for Beacon Global Strategies. This is David Shedd. Who started work for them June 3rd of 2015, was acting director of the Defense Intelligence Agency until 2015, was previously deputy for policy plans and requirements for the Director of National Intelligence. He joined the board of advisors for defense consulting firm Beacon Global Strategies in 2015, along with the board of Pentagon contractor Nobles. According to a 2013 Defense News article, Beacon's clients are primarily defense contractors, but not listed because of non-disclosure agreements. The Verge reported Data Miner, another company Shedd serves on board of, hired Beacon to sell its surveillance services to foreign governments. Derek Chollet joined Beacon in March 2015. He was U.S. Assistant Secretary of Defense for International Security Affairs. He joined the defense consulting firm Beacon Global as advisor in March of 2015. And according, they are primarily defense contractors. Individual, another one, Admiral James Winnefeld. Joined again December 8th, 2015. He retired as vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Joint Chiefs of Staff. In 2015, he joined the board of the defense consulting group Beacon Global Strategies and of major Pentagon contractor Raytheon in 2017. And they provide advice to defense and intelligence contractors, what Beacon does. Admiral James Stavridis, and you've probably seen him on TV a few times over there criticizing Trump whenever he can. Retired Admiral Stavridis retired as commander of European Command and Supreme Allied Commander Europe 2013. A year later, he joined the advisory board for defense contracting consulting firm Beacon Global Strategies. He also became chair of Pentagon contractor Northrop Grumman's International Advisory Board. So you see all these generals, anytime you see them on TV, everybody says, oh, they're generals, you gotta listen to what they say. Now, these guys are just out there making money, and they're making a lot of money. They're making buku bucks. Jeremy Bash, one of the founders. Okay, Date joined. You see, I just saw him on MSNBC criticizing President Trump over the Syria, over the Kurds, everything else. And of course, he wants us to stay in Syria, go to war in Syria, go to war anywhere, go to war in Iran, because his clients are, defense contractors, and they make money when they have to replace things when people get blown up, and those things get blown up with them. Jeremy Bash was Chief of Staff to Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta from 2011 to 2013. Later that year, he founded Beacon Global Strategies, a consulting firm for defense contractors. And the number one donor for Beacon was a Hillary Clinton donor, number one who provided the seed money for Beacon, to get them started. 2013, Pogo wrote about how Bash's ties to the defense industry were not disclosed as he advocated for military action in Syria. This is back in 2013. According to Fox News, Beacon Global Strategies registered as an LLC in April of 2013. According to a 2013 Defense News article, their clients are primarily defense contractors. So back in April of 2013, he was advocating going to war with Syria, and he didn't bother to disclose that to anybody that he was working for a defense contractor who make a lot of money. We did a full-blown war in Syria. Jeremy Bash. Again, you see him on MSNBC all the time. He's formerly married to Dana Bash with CNN. Mark Simakowski, he joined Beacon Global Strategies. They don't have a date. He was Russia country director and later Europe NATO Chief of Staff in the Office of the Secretary of Defense for Policy. That role, he drafted the Department of Defense Russia strategy. Okay, and then General John F. Kelly, he went to work for Beacon for a short period of time before joining the Trump administration, October 1st, 2016. According to the 2016 Government Ethics Forum, he was an advisor to Pentagon contractor Dynacorp International, Pentagon contractor consulting firm Beacon Global Strategies. He later became Secretary of Homeland Security, and at the time of the writing, this was currently White House Chief of Staff to President Trump. And Beacon paid him, I believe he got paid like $12,500 for his work in 2016. And probably my guess is it's probably working for them or somebody similar to them right now. Then, of course, Leon Panetta, he joined Beacon May of 2014. Leon Panetta was Secretary of Defense from July of 2011 to February 2013. He previously was Director of the Central Intelligence Agency. During the Clinton administration, he was also White House Chief of Staff and Director of Office of Management and Budget. Shortly after leaving the Department of Defense, he joined the International Advisory Board of Defense PR firm Fleischman Hillard, and I covered some stuff on them. They have offices in Kiev, if I'm not mistaken. He became Kiev, that's the Ukraine, if you will. He became a senior counsel of defense contractor consulting group Beacon Global in 2014, and of course they represent primarily defense contractors. Deborah Lee James was Secretary of the Air Force from 2013 to 2017, and boom, now she's over there at Beacon. And that was all of them right there. And, of course, Philip Rines was one of the co-founders. He wasn't listed here at the time, but he was one of the co-founders. And, of course, he was close ties to the Clinton organization. And this is from the website Beacon Global Strategies. And drawing on our decades, they even advertised 8 former senior officials from the Department of Defense. And, you know, we represent defense contractors, blah, 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 blah. And again, some of the names that were previously mentioned. And this was interesting. This was back in, reload this. This was back in 2016, this story. A former CIA director just endorsed Hillary, what you're not being told. So he's like, oh, former CIA director endorsing Hillary Clinton. Oh, she must be the right person to vote for. This is back in 2016. So here we go. Michael Morell, former director. Let me see if I got this big enough for you guys. Nope. Let me bring this up. All right. And make sure I'm not covering it here. This was from August 5th, 2016. And this was from Anti-Media. All right. Make sure I'm not covering anything up here. Nope. Good. Okay. Michael Morell, former director and deputy director of the CIA between 2010 and 2013, is close to Hillary Clinton. Sorry. But you wouldn't know just that by asking. Once he left the CIA, Morell became a senior counselor for Beacon Global Strategies, a consulting firm founded by Philip Rines, a longtime ally of Clinton. In a recent op-ed for the New York Times, Morell details why he's supporting the Democrat in November. As observed by Gawker, the 33-year CIA veteran goes to great lengths in his op-ed to paint his position as nonpartisan. I'm not partisan, but he fails to mention that he indeed has close ties to his candidate. He writes, I served presidents of both parties. I was at President George Bush's side when we were attacked on 9/11. And as deputy director of the agency, I was with President Obama when we killed Osama bin Laden. I am neither a registered Democrat nor a registered Republican. In my 40 years of voting, I pulled the lever for candidates of both parties. As a government official, I've always been silent about my preference for president. So anyway, but Morell's boss at Beacon Global Strategies, Philip Rines, is often described as the puppet master when it comes to Clinton and her campaign. Recently, Rines was mentioned in the documentary. Hold on, let me try and close this out. Let's see. Make sure that's not going to play. Let's try and get this ad out of here. Where is it? Ads by Scroll Reds. Oh, that sucks. Can't seem to find the little X to X that out. But I don't hear it. So hopefully it's not going up. Let me double check. It doesn't appear to be. So we're going to have to deal with this ad. It's right in the way. But I'll read it to you. So anyway. All right. Let's see. Recently, here we go. Recently, Rines was mentioned in the documentary film Weiner, a film that chronicles former Congressman Anthony Weiner's 2013 campaign. And make sure we're still going good here. campaign for New York City mayor. Wiener's wife, Uma Abedin, has been a Clinton aide since 1996 and now serves as vice chair of her election campaign. During the film, Abedin is seen taking orders from Reins in multiple occasions, according to the Daily Beast, which summarized the documentary. When the wheels begin to fall off of Wiener's 2013 mayoral campaign in the wake of yet another sexting scandal, the Daily Beast reports Abedin is captured through a series of surreptitious phone calls, taking orders from Hillary Clinton's right-hand man and ex-Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, Reins, which highlights the reach of the Clinton machine. In the New York Times op-ed, Morell, who now works for Clinton's right-hand man, says the Democrat would be the best choice for president because she's, quote-unquote, prepared, detail-oriented, thoughtful, inquisitive, and willing to change her mind if presented with a compelling argument. He observed all this, he says, while working with her during her tenure as Secretary of State. According to the CIA veteran, Clinton understands that America is an exceptional nation that must lead in the world for the country to remain secure and prosperous, meaning we should get involved in foreign adventures, basically, in foreign wars. We have to lead by getting involved in foreign wars because that makes Global Strategies LLC, Beacon Global Strategies LLC, a ton of money because it makes their clients a ton of money. And he vouches for her capacity to make the most difficult decision of all, whether to put young American women and men in harm's way. On the surface, Morell's comments seem identical to what President Barack Obama has said about his former Secretary of State. But Morell's involvement with Clinton on a professional level outside of the realm of government may offer other clues as to what is motivating him to stand by the Democrat. Again, this is back in 2016. According to Beacon Global Strategy's own website, his firm focuses on international policy, defense, cyber intelligence, and homeland security. According to Little Sis, a database of liaisons between members of government and private industries, one of Beacon's top clients is none other than Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton. So the time this guy's saying, oh, she should run, he's working for Beacon Global for Philip Reins, and Hillary Clinton's one of their top clients, making a ton of paying him to write this op-ed. But he doesn't bother telling anybody that. They also had Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz listed as well as their clients. So The Intercept reported on this link between Beacon Global Strategies, Clinton, Rubio, and Cruz back in 2015. And Beacon Global Strategies seed funding, there we go. Beacon Global Strategies seed funding came from Claude Fontheim, a former Clinton advisor who now serves as a lobbyist to the U.S.-China Exchange Foundation, a nonprofit reportedly used by the Chinese government officials and Hong Kong tycoons to shape American policy toward China. So the guy who put all this together is working for the Chinese. He's a big money guy for the Clintons, and now this guy's helping shape, is now a lobbyist for China. And despite Morell's claims that the dangers that flow from Mr. Trump's character are damaging to our national security, a close look at the former CIA director's professional ties to Clinton may prompt us to question whether his op-ed was but a mere attempt to stand up for one of her top clients. After all, Morell failed to disclose the fact his company provides high-profile foreign policy guidance to the candidates he's now endorsing. But he also failed to disclose that his firm is funded by lobbyists that work in lockstep with the Chinese government. Another entity that may not see Donald Trump as a viable presidential candidate. Yeah, even back then the Chinese knew this guy gets in, he's going to be a real pain in the ass. Which could also explain why the firm is so invested in booting Clinton's image. Okay. So anyway, back to Philip Reins. Let's take a look here. Let me make sure we're good to go here. All right. This is from Jason Horowitz of the Washington Post. Hey, that's Jeffrey Bezos' company. Hey, Amazon. I just ordered some stuff from Amazon. We get great low prices and free 2-day shipping if you're a Prime member. Sometimes even 1-day free shipping. Amazing. Amazon. Nonetheless. Anyway, so this is from the Washington Post, and this was written in June of 2011 by Jason Horowitz, and the title is "Longtime Keeper of Hillary Clinton's Image Has Forged a Loyal Badge of His Own." Philip Reins looked right at home. This is, I guess he's doing like a puff piece of the guy, doing whatever of the guy. He's just doing a story of the guy. But anyway, let me get to, let's see. He's talking about how he's doing this interview with Clinton and how he's telling her what to do, and she's listening, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Let's see. As the impromptu prep session moved into Clinton's private chamber, Reins reminded Clinton, who has said she will leave her post in 12, to expect a question about her plans for the future. So Couric asked, he was there with her, well, I don't know. I was thinking maybe take your job. Okay, blah, blah, blah. And she even says, she said, I only do what Philip tells me, so if I'm not supposed to talk, I won't talk. That's how. Reins, as is often the case, spoke for her. Okay, so part of the family. By his own account, Raines has been hired, fired, forgiven, benched, promoted, and promoted again. He's currently Clinton's Deputy Assistant Secretary for Strategic Communications. Think about that job, Strategic Communications, like Blackberries, like emails, like whatever. But that strategic communication means something a little bit different. But nonetheless, I find that kind of a funny choice of words. He's Secretary for Strategic Communications. Again, that means something else. It means, it basically means communicating strategically. It doesn't mean like he's in charge of like hiding the Blackberries or ditching the server like in, Kiev or something. It doesn't mean that. But still, I found that kind of amusing. And has been the caretaker of a public image through her iterations as a rookie senator, front-runner presidential candidate, saw loser, and resurgent Secretary of State. He is, he says, part of the family, this is Raines saying, of Clinton lifers, like Stephen Ricchetti, another Clinton lifer who now is working in the Biden campaign as a spy and as a saboteur. But the famously boyish, naive New Yorker also belongs to a more extended and, if possible, more dysfunctional family of politicos, operatives, staffers, reporters, TV bookers, media types, government officials, and frosted society scenesters. And he bears some of their less appealing traits. Now, this kind of goes a long way with people like who work at state, people who work for like the Clintons. They don't go out on their own and do their own thing. He says, and he bears some of their less appealing traits: an addiction to background dish, gossip, knowing where all the bodies are buried, media recognition, and proximity to power, without ever doing anything on their own to get their own power. The counterweight to Raines' reputation for disinformation and dining out on the Clintons' name is his profound loyalty to his adoptive clans. For that, he is Clinton's favorite son in the life of his perpetual D.C. party. Now, again, going back to watching how Dana Perino and Tucker Carlson were interacting with Raines, saying, well, I know you don't work for the Clintons anymore. I know you're not a spokesman for them anymore. Okay? It shows you just how naive the rest of us are. I mean, I had to do a lot of research to find all this stuff. It's all open source. It's out there. You just got to dig for it. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. Why is Giuliani doing this investigation of the Bidens? Well, look, I found all this stuff on open source. I mean, me, Carl's opinion, and, a Google Family Plan membership, okay, on Google, okay? If you don't think the Biden legal team, which is not Biden, the Giuliani legal team, which is more than just Rudy Giuliani, it's got investigators and everything else. They're digging and they're finding stuff, documents, whatever. And they're seeing all this thing started with, the Bidens and the Ukraine, kind of with V.Nuland, State Department, same people who's talking to Christopher Steele on the other end of this. So this is where it all begins. It all makes sense. Why Giuliani? If he started after the Hunter Biden, Joe Biden story, and he just started right after that, look for the corruption and whatever in 2016, he'd be missing a whole part of the beginning of the story. He wouldn't see where all this whole thing started from. So it's important that he does investigate this, and it's not improper to do so. And it's not improper to ask Ukrainians to investigate Biden, especially since the Bidens were the one who got this whole ball rolling with Nuland and Chalupa and everybody at the DNC and the Clinton team and the Clinton cronies and everybody else, the Clinton lifers, as he called himself. So, and we got a Wikipedia page here. Let's see, Dana Perino. I pretty much did her Wikipedia just to see that she's kind of an outsider, that go. And then here's from the New York Times. And this was from, when was this written? October 23rd, 2019, just 6 days ago. So this is interesting. Trump's war on the deep state turns against him. The impeachment inquiry is in some ways the culmination of a battle between the president and the government institutions he distrusted and disparaged. It's an interesting take, this story, actually. So it was by Peter Baker, Laura Jakes, Julian Barnes, Sharon Lafreniere, and Edward Wong. October 23rd, 2019, Washington. Nameless, faceless, and voiceless, the CIA officer who first triggered the greatest threat to President Trump's tenure in office seemed to be practically the embodiment of the deep state that the president has long accused of trying to take him down. But over these last 3 weeks, the deep state has emerged from the shadows in the form of real live government officials, past and present, who have defied a White House attempt to block cooperation with House impeachment investigators and provided evidence that largely backs up the still anonymous whistleblower. Now, see, I don't think it's like a quote-unquote deep state. Like, there's not like a deep state meeting like every other week. They'll meet in Chicago at this convention center. No. what the deep state is, it's kind of like that video we saw from that one State Department lady and guys like Philip Raines and Jeremy Bash and, those kind of guys. They're followers, okay? They're people who couldn't make it on their own. They have to, like, become part of an organization like State Department, Pentagon, whatever. They have to follow somebody like a Clinton or somebody of power. They're attracted. They want to know where the bodies are buried. They want to know, we know what's really going on in the world. We're the movers and the shakers. We're creating the policy. I heard this guy on MSNBC again, like I was saying. He goes, well, the president doesn't have a policy. There's no policy created. Yeah, there's not like 20 guys behind him that are writing all these position papers for him to read and say, talk to this person like this. Don't talk like this. Deal with this guy over here. Don't deal with this guy. He's just doing it on his own. H.W. Bush ran into the same problems. When he did their first Gulf War, he was on the phone talking to world leaders. I mean, he got Syria to attack another Arab country in the Middle East in the first Gulf War, to where Syria attacking Iraqi forces. Now, the deal Syria had was that they wouldn't go outside of Kuwait into Iraq proper because they didn't want to set the precedent for somebody going into their country. Fair enough, they still fought Iraqi soldiers. That's pretty amazing that he was able to do that. Well, anyway, they drove the State Department crazy. I remember reading all the details at the time. It's like, State Department was trying to follow him around. They don't know who he's talking to. Who did he talk to? What did he say? What's going on? Because they were out of the loop. And that drives them nuts, because the whole reason they took these jobs was to be in the loop, to know where the bodies are buried, to be around people of power, to be able to go to a foreign country with never been elected to anything, not having any kind of real skills or any qualities worth looking at, able to tell foreign leaders what to do, what to say. Say, no, we're not giving you this money. We're giving you this money. You got to do this, or you're not getting the money. They enjoy that. It makes them feel powerful. They think they're elite with their little bachelor's degree. Okay, whoop-de-doo. Maybe some have a master's, whoop-de-doo. But they think they know better than the rest of us. And so when you talk about the deep state, it's not so much like there's a deep state party. What it is it's a group of people who think they know better than the rest of us. They know Russia didn't interfere in the election to help Trump win it. Okay, they know Trump won that election fair and square. And that drives them more insane, because now you have regular people like us. And the reason why they hate Trump so much is that they don't hate Trump. They loved Trump before Trump spoke for us. Trump gives middle working class people a sense of empowerment, a sense that, people went out to vote in 2016 who never voted before, who hadn't voted in years, because they felt like it didn't matter. I mean, again, if Jeb Bush was the nominee for the Republicans in 2016, what would have the difference been in voting for Jeb Bush or Hillary Clinton? None. It would have been no difference. So, and that's the point. That's why people felt like, well, if I vote Republican, I get the same thing. If I vote Democrat, it really doesn't matter. Nothing changes. These people are out for themselves. They're out to make money. They don't mind sending people to wars to get killed, because that means equipment gets blown up when they get killed, and that equipment has to be replaced, and we get to make a whole bunch of money doing it. We like we always hear people say, we want to have influence around the world. We want to lead around the world. Like, we have to have influence. Like, if we don't have influence over there, something bad's going to happen. Well, we've had influence a lot of places, and nothing necessarily good has happened because of that. Okay, sometimes people just got to do what people are going to do, and you don't need to be over there. But if the whole thing of the State Department is diplomacy. Well, if you're not engaged with the rest of the world, like, every 2 seconds, well, you don't need as many diplomats, and you're not as important. You can imagine they write all these position papers, they shoot them up to Pompeo. Pompeo looks at them and goes, well, okay, thanks. President already made a decision. Like, I spent the last 2 weeks on this, and now nobody's going to read it. He's not going to act on it. He's going to act. He's going to just the opposite of what you said. In fact, Pompeo probably says to these guys, Taylor, write me a position paper, right? He goes, good. Now I want to show this to the president, because he always says, show me what these guys do, because that way I'll do just the opposite. I'm sure that drives these people nuts. So anyway, these people have no problem going up there and saying how awful he is, and he's not following protocol, he's not following this policy and these procedures, and blah 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 blah. Meanwhile, we're not at war with North Korea. We're not at war with Iran. We're pulling out of Syria. We didn't get between the Russians, the Turks, the Syrians, and the Kurds, and the Iranians. We didn't get between that mess. We're getting ready to pull out of Afghanistan after, Jesus Christ, 18 years now. Over 18 years. I mean, that's insane. I mean, that's just freaking insane. And here's the thing, like, ISIS is going to come back. Are you kidding me? First of all, if we're not there, that means guess who's fighting ISIS? The Kurds, the Kurds, and/or the Russians, and/or the Syrians, and/or the Turks, and/or the Iranians. Okay, everybody I just mentioned hates those guys. The only reason why the Turks were even kind of a little not so much caring about ISIS in the beginning was because they were fighting the Kurds. The Kurds actually commit real terrorism acts in Turkey. And ISIS said, okay, look, don't fight us. We won't commit acts of terrorism. And they're like, okay, fine. We got enough of this group already. But, now they're pretty much all on the same page. We get rid of these idiots. We want them gone. Okay? So, and trust me, these people, they don't have rules of engagement like we do. They don't have to take prisoners. Okay? Let's just be honest about that. These people that are over there, these ISIS fighters, they're just animals. Well, we have to take prisoners and we got all these rules of engagement. Well, Russians, the Turks, the Kurds, trust me, the Kurds have no rules of engagement when it comes to these idiots. ISIS, they hate them. And same thing with the Syrians. I mean, ISIS devastated their country for years. So, they can take care of them just fine. But anyway, so you see here the parade of witnesses. Let me go on with this. The parade of witnesses marching to Capitol Hill culminated this week with a dramatic testimony of William Taylor. 50 years, officer and diplomat. He served his country 50 years. Yeah, 50 years, like he's been around too long. Let's see. What else here? Let's see. And then here, the Times even takes this quote out. And so it's talking about from the State Department point of view, from the professional civil servant class point of view. With all the denigration and disparagement and diminishment, I think you're seeing some payback here, not by design but by opportunity, said Representative Gerald Connolly, a Democrat. Even the Democrat saying from Washington's Virginia suburbs, who represents many federal employees. It's almost karmic justice. All of a sudden, there's an opportunity for people who know things to speak out, testify about it. And again, they're doing so. Yeah, basically they're saying, oh, we finally get to say how much we hate this guy and why. And how crude he is, and how crass he is, and how terrible he is. And he's terrible. He's not listening to us. He won't do anything. It's like, what? Doesn't he know we're supposed to run this country? See, the Founding Fathers put the Bill of Rights in. Let me tell you about this. They put the Bill of Rights in. They weren't afraid some dictator was going to rise from the ashes and just suddenly take over. We need the Bill of Rights to protect us. I mean, a dictator took over. The Bill of Rights doesn't mean anything. Okay, think about that, like a military coup or something. You don't have a Bill of Rights at that point. You got a military coup. It's upended. The Constitution no longer in place. What they were afraid of was like this country being taken over, the will of the people being usurped by 1,000 cuts. Okay, by bureaucrats, by civil servants. They needed a civil service class. They understood that, so there wouldn't be too much political patronage, and you have people just running the government, just getting things done. But they were afraid of the civil servants. The old saying is, the clerks are the one who gave Hitler his power. The clerk, the bureaucrats, the civil service clerks. They were afraid of the civil servants. That would eventually the bureaucracy would get so big it would just kind of dominate. Even back then, they knew bureaucracy just had a way of growing. And eventually you would be usurping your individual liberties, your right to speak, okay, to say what you want, like about this government, about the bureaucrats, okay, your right to peacefully assemble and complain, okay, primarily complain, your right to keep and bear arms in case they got way out of control, okay, so the government would not have a monopoly on the use of force. Fourth Amendment rights, your right against improper illegal search and seizures. Fifth Amendment right to due process. Before your life, liberty, or property be taken away from you must be afforded due process. Sixth Amendment right to counsel, right to speedy trial. And then Eighth Amendment, right to no unreasonable bail, punishment, et cetera, et cetera. So they wanted to make sure the individual liberties would not be taken over by the civil service, by the bureaucracy, by the strong central government. That's what they were put in there for, because they were afraid of people just like this. These people just dying to come in and tell everybody how awful Trump is. Meanwhile, and it really pisses them off. He's accomplishing things foreign policy-wise they according to them, was never possible. Never possible, okay? And he's making it happen, showing them it is possible if you get out of your little 10 by 10 office cubicle with your cheap, crappy ass, government-issued furniture, with your storage boxes under your desk. If you get out of there and, don't pretend to be all important getting on a, private plane or a courier plane or whatever with your own private bodyguard team, which, if you're in the private sector, these people would never even get to that point. So that's what it comes down to. So anyway, I'm going to take a quick break here again, and so just bear with me, and I'll be right back. Thanks. Hey, I'm back. Thanks. Hey, so I hope you guys like that. Hold on, let me get this stupid. Thanks. Anyway, hey, sorry. Hope you guys like that, and I had a lot of ground to cover there, so I really don't want to take any phone calls or anything. I just wanted to kind of run through it. Had a lot of articles up there in the queue. Kind of wanted to bounce back and forth to them. As you can see, it's all open source research. It's all out there. It's just what these people do. It's not unique. It's they make it a little complex to try to sort out. They don't make it too complex. Again, it's not very imaginative, but it's not, and it's not real complex either. But what it is, it's complex enough for like a voting group of people who have a low attention span. Like we've been on now for an hour and a half. Obviously the viewers of this site have a attention span longer than 10 minutes, which is good, and like I have a attention span that's longer than 10 minutes also. So, but most people don't. So, like say like a Sean Hannity or Tucker Carlson did a show like this, they would have to put all this together. Like at most, it'd have to be like a 15-minute segment, maybe 20, before people started turning the channel. So what they do is they make it complex enough so that the low attention voter. Short attention span voter doesn't want to hear about it. It's too complicated for them. They want to hear about it. It's like, oh, this is taking too long to get through, and that's their whole plan on doing this. They form these LLCs. They go in and out of government. They have these ties to this person, and you see even people like Dana Bash, and not Dana Bash. I apologize. Dana Perino, on there, not quite getting what this guy Philip Breen's what his story is. What the fact that he never left the Clintons. He's been involved with the Clintons from the time he started with them back in the 90s all the way through till today with Beacon Global Strategies LLC. Again, that company was the initial seed money for that came from a big time Clinton donor to get them started. One of their biggest clients was Hillary Clinton. They bring in all kinds of people from state, defense. They get paid for access. And that's another thing that bothers him about Trump is that when you see these people leaving state and defense, or he's firing this person, firing that person, well, they're losing their access. Okay, they're losing their marketability. They can't say, somebody hires them and say, hey, I need you to pick up the phone and call this guy to make sure I can get this contract. Well, if that guy's no longer there, if he resigned or he got fired or he ran into a problem with Trump, or Trump's not going to listen to this guy, then they're not going to get that contract, and suddenly these guys aren't as valuable anymore to anybody. And that's the thing. So again, they make it just a little bit complex. So it's just outside of the scope of what it would take to do like in a 5-minute news segment. You can't put this together in 5 minutes. You can't do it. And that's their plan. And that's how they run. That's how they run things, and that's how they rule. So for our part, we got to make sure we stay vigilant. There are a number of sites and articles that I reference here that do really great work, as you saw, like Pogo, Anti-Media. Sites like that even like when you read like mainstream newspapers like Washington Post, I covered their New York Times, Washington Post, they put in their stories, they have to cover the facts. They put in there the stories like New York Times covering the fact that the new prosecutor Luchenko, they said he closes the case against Burisma the way they write it too is less than 10 months after he started, making it sound like he closed it pretty quick. But the whole point of that was, if you look at it, was that the whole Biden team claimed, when Biden told them to fire that prosecutor Shotkin, the Burisma case had already been closed a long time ago. Well, it hadn't been, obviously, because it wasn't closed for another 10 months, not until January of 2017, and the criminal case was kind of officially closed in September, 6 months later. And then, of course, they did that whole deal, and with the tax fraud case, and had them write a check to the government for $90 million, which was really a fine for the criminal case. They just didn't want to have to plead guilty. It was a deal they worked out with their high-powered attorneys out of New York, John Beretta, former Department of Justice official, antitrust, that kind of stuff. They bring in some big heavy hitters, lots of money. And then plus they bring in the PR firms. The PR firms is where it's really at. Public relation firms. You saw a couple of names I mentioned there. They're the ones that really go out there. And public relations doesn't mean they put ads in newspapers. It means they have people, again, who can get you access. In order to set that meeting up, Beretta wanted that meeting with the new prosecutor. Well, the new prosecutor said no because they just saw how badly, the Bidens and everybody had smeared the former prosecutor, so he had no interest. So then they used their PR firm, Burisma's PR firm, to contact people in the Ukrainian embassy to lean on, the president lean on the new prosecutor to set up a meeting so they could discuss this, and it happened. And so it's again, PR firms. If you think of them like they're running ads or commercials or stuff like that. No, these are guys who are former high up State Department officials, Defense Department officials, CIA, Department of National Intelligence officials that can get you access and get things done for you. That's what a PR firm actually does for these guys. So again, they make it complex. They kind of, so even if you look at it, you go, oh God, like even putting this together, I'm looking at this like, oh God, like every time I'm clicking on somebody's name, I'm grabbing another article. It gets exhausting. Most people, we don't have time for that. Most of us, we work. We have families. We have things we got to take care of. So meanwhile, they're over there. They're over there doing stuff that we don't realize it's happening. And the whole thing, like how Clinton ripped off Sanders in 2016. H.A. Goodman goes into this in great detail. He was the inspiration for a lot of this deep dive I did. He got me curious on the Clinton machine. I hadn't really heard anybody report it the way he has on his channel. I watch H.A. Goodman all the time. The sad part is sometimes he comes on around the same time I do because he's on the West Coast. He's on the same time zone I am, so he comes on late also. But I've been real busy at work for the last couple of weeks, so it gave me an opportunity to watch a lot of his shows because, but he come on like at 9 or 10 or 8 or something like that. So I'm like kind of wanting to zone out. So I got to watch a lot of his shows, and he discusses the Clintons and the Clinton machine a lot, and it got me curious to kind of deep dive into all this. So I want to thank him for that and for providing me the inspiration to do all this. So anyway, I want to thank everybody. Let's see. Let's take a look at the chat real quick here. Okay, we got. Let's see. I want to thank everybody who's been on there, and I see the one guy there whose name I won't say out loud, but I'll say hello, CR, how you doing? And D.A. Archer, and I see Honeybee over there, and see Rocky Solex, Lyle Budd, and Fred, and let's see, I'm going to miss somebody, I know it. I really hate when I do that. But let's see, how far back I can go here. But let's see, there's, and where are we at? Here we are. Okay, and Rocky. Okay, good. I said Rocky. All right. But I want to thank everybody who's been in the chat. I want to thank everybody who's been watching us. I want to thank everybody who'll be watching us later. And thanks, everybody. Really good, intelligent chat. I really liked it tonight. I really enjoyed reading the comments as I was going along. I really couldn't read too many of them, but they looked really, really good. So anyway, so just kind of keep this in mind what's going on. And so the whole point of this was, why is Rudy Giuliani investigating the Bidens? Well, again, if you start after the Bidens' involvement in the Ukraine, well, you can't piece the whole story together. You have to start somewhere. And unfortunately for the Bidens, they're the ones who started the whole mess. So of course he has to investigate the Bidens, and of course Trump wanted the Bidens investigated because, again, he saw the line between the Bidens, the State Department, Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, firing the prosecutor, and all the money coming across before then. And then, I put up there that Nuland had met with Steele in 2014. One thing I didn't put up, she had also met with him June or July of 2016 also, to get his information, his reports on, the infamous Steele dossier, if you will. So, I mean, all these people are all interconnected, and in order to do a proper investigation, Giuliani, he went after the mob. He's been getting badmouthed a lot, but he's the guy who took down the Italian mafia in New York. And the Italian mafia is no longer what they once were. I mean, they can't move or anything without being seen. He brought in Rico for the first time to take down the Italian mafia, and he did. He took down the Italian mafia in New York, broke up all the families and everything, put all their big names, put them in prison. A lot of them died in prison. I mean, and everybody, when he was U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, I mean, nobody had any criticism from back then, but now, he's stupid, he's this, he's that, whatever. But I mean, he's chasing the facts, he's chasing the evidence, and the evidence, again, his investigators are way more sophisticated than I am. His investigation is way more sophisticated than I can do. This is all open source. He's getting deep dive into a lot of things that are not open source, and so he saw all this. This is why he said, this is where it started. We got to go look at these people. Sorry, Joe's running for president. That doesn't mean you get to just say, well, I'm running for president. You can't investigate me. Oh, well, again, nobody has any thought in their mind this guy's going to be the nominee for the party. It's not going to happen. I mean, not to mention Ricchetti going to make sure that doesn't happen, Steve Ricchetti. So that's not going to happen. And Biden himself is going to make sure it doesn't happen. Anybody who knows Joe Biden knows that there's no way with all all the weird photos at the Capitol when he's swearing people in, all that touchy-feely stuff and everything. Yeah, I mean, there's just too much stuff going on there. So, Trump was never worried that this guy was going to be the nominee, or even if he was going to be the nominee, he knew. Imagine Trump versus Biden in a debate. Can you imagine what that would look like? I mean, man, Trump would have ate him up like he wasn't standing there. I mean, I don't think he's ever going to get a chance to. But it would be game over. The first debate, Biden would be all stumbling, bumbling, wouldn't know what he was saying, be mixing people up. The other day, he mixed up Henry Cisneros with Julian Castro. Cisneros was mayor of San Antonio like 30 years ago. And he mixed those two guys up. He mixed up a whole bunch of stuff. So anyway, I want to thank everybody again who's been with us. So I just want to say, everybody have a great night. And for Carl's Opinion, this is Carl, and we'll see you on the next live stream. All right, guys, have a good one. Bye-bye.